final panel. We have Mellonee Burnim. She's going to kick us off. She's over at Indiana, professor of folklore and ethnomusicology. Theodore Burgh, assistant professor of philosophy and religion and anthropology at UNC Wilmington. And you can follow along with your lyrics now. Then we have Evelyn Harris, singer, teacher, choir director, who's going after Brother Burgh. And then we have Dwight Andrews at Emory University and senior minister, First Congregational United Church of Christ in Atlanta. My dear brother I've known since I was 18. Yeah, you can keep it going. And then William Mcclain at Wesley Theological Seminary, and Dennis Wiley at Howard Divinity School and the Covenant Baptist Church in D.C. We're going to let that play, and then the next voice you will hear is Mellonee Burnim.
Of love, God Almighty, God above, please look down and see my people through.
That's Mahalia Jackson. The year was 1971. I was a first-year teacher in Louisville, Texas. I had graduated with a Bachelor of Music degree from one of the largest and best music schools in the country, North Texas State University. And my assignment was 3 choirs, 7th and 8th grade, not one single solitary male in either of them, and 3 6th grade general music classes, one with 80 students, one with 95 students, one with 115 students. My challenge for them was to teach them music, the standard fare, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, what you're taught in a traditional school of music. Did it connect? Were they interested? By no means. I had a challenge. If I wanted to take them where I wanted them to go in learning music, I had to first reach them where they were. It was time to be innovative, time to be creative. And I went to the music that I knew best, the music that I had grown up with. Mahalia Jackson. Everybody loves Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia captures you where you are and transports you to someplace else. This will reach them. So I brought in my recording of Mahalia Jackson and played it for my class. The white students laughed, and they were in the majority. And the few black students who were in the classroom came to me afterwards and said, "Miss Burnim, please don't play that stuff anymore." I was crushed. What do you do? How do you reach them? There's a story in the music. It's about who we are, and yet they don't understand. But my chagrin was with the training that I had received as a music major in one of the finest music schools in the country. They had not prepared me to do the job that needed to be done in the school system. So I began a search, knowing that graduate school was the direction I wanted to take. But there was really no purpose in continuing to pursue music education and getting more of the same. I later discovered ethnomusicology. I met a woman who was working on a doctorate in African American music. She was studying this music that was a part of us, to find who we were, getting a degree in it. I was so excited. Ethnomusicology, the study of music as culture, understanding that music is more than simply the printed notes on a page. Understanding that music is more than just that sound that comes off of that, what was then the tape recorder or record player, as we called it. But music speaks of a people. Music tells our stories, wherever we are, whomever we may be. So going into ethnomusicology allowed me to begin to look at this music of Mahalia Jackson, this music that I had grown up with in rural Texas. I wanted to understand what was the dynamic of that music. When folks jumped up and shouted, what were they shouting about? When folks got happy, what was it? Was it simply as it had always been described? Folks just emotional? Folks just responding to something that makes them want to kind of move around a little bit, but there's no real substance? Was there any meaning that was embodied in what was transpiring in those worship services? In my hometown, I grew up United Methodist, not AME, not AME Zion. My hometown was Tigg, Texas, population 2,728. We had church once a month in my church. I played for the junior choir. You all know about the junior choir? I played for the junior choir. It wasn't a youth choir, it's a junior choir. On the other Sundays of the month, though, we visited other churches. I played for some of those. Primitive Baptist, Missionary Baptist. We all sang the same songs. The repertoire was the same. We sang them the same way. The style didn't change when we went from one denomination to the next. It was who we were. And even that old man, Mr. Will Collins, sitting there in the corner with his little pocket hymnal that had no music, no notes, only the words, who lined out those hymns, which were not our indigenous music, but it was a music that came up from the inside. Now, I didn't want to hear it when I was growing up, and I'm going to tell the truth. Neither I wanted to hear it nor any of the other teenagers, the younger people. We stayed outside of church as long as they were singing it. See, that was what they called the devotion. Anybody know about that in here? That was devotion when they sang those old songs. We didn't want to hear those old songs. And as soon as that was over and the choir processed, are y'all with me? As soon as that was over and the choir processed, then we would go into the church. It was time to have church. So here I am, an ethnomusicologist. What does this all mean? How do we put it all together? I started out in African music because I wanted to understand, was there really some connection? We are Negroes. We are black folks, and we even country folks. Does it have anything to do with Africa? So I studied Africa, and my foray into African musics led me to the musics of my own church. So I discover what Mahalia is doing, and how there was a music that represented freedom. Why and how? It's more than the words. When we think of African American music, we have to think of it in the same lens as we think of African musics. My colleagues in African music talk about a constellation of the arts. So where there is music, Sister Emily, there is also dance. Where there is music and dance, there is also theater. They are integrally related one to the other. There is no separation between one and the other, but it all comes together. Now, what I saw in that rural church was we only had a piano. There was no Hammond organ. And when folks sang in the choir, they didn't rock side to side. But you know what they did do? There was a hardwood floor. Oh, yeah. Are you with me? Yes, I am. And you could hear the pat of the feet. The same percussive delivery that we hear in the hand clapping and we see and experience in the dance of today's contemporary church, in today's contemporary gospel music artist. What my discovery has been, what my journey has been, is to define what shapes the concepts of African American gospel music. What I have discovered in the process is that even though we talk about the distinctions between spirituals and gospel music, I'm sorry, but you can't understand one without the other. You see, sometimes folks feel that gospel music came out of another tradition, and we simply kind of reconstructed it to make it our own. But no, gospel music came out of who we were, the musics that we created out of the slave experience. Gospel music and spirituals are not the same. But I didn't understand why Mahalia Jackson sang songs like, "Sometimes I feel like a motherless child," but that's a spiritual. Mahalia Jackson sang, "There's a balm in Gilead." That's a spiritual. But talk to Mahalia, and she would tell you, "I'm a gospel singer. I'm a bread and butter singer." So we learned then that gospel music, to understand the frame that defines it, there are three basic areas: quality of sound, or that timbre. So how do you know Mahalia's voice versus Aretha's voice? What are folks listening to? One thing, the timbre, just that quality of sound, that fullness, none of that is an accident. That defines Mahalia and who she is. Makes you listen to her. Second, mechanics of delivery. So we look at the technical aspects of performance, the music itself. What is she doing that establishes the dynamic character of her musicianships? She is manipulating time, text, and pitch. When I say time, she's dealing with issues of rhythm. She's dealing with issues of structure. We just heard her doing Come Sunday. She continued to sing it over and over and over. And if you don't know the lexicon, it can get right boring. But Mahalia was not simply doing it over and over and over. It was evolving. It was changing. As she got to the end, she moaned. She groaned. She gave us different vocal timbres to continue to hold our interest and to allow her to express who she was as a musician. She gives us a quote herself to share with us how she felt about the whole issue of time, for example, and how she understood that there was a specific way of defining what the music was all about that was important for one to know if you were going to be able to achieve your goal within the context of singing to an audience and communicating with them. She says about time. First, you got to get the rhythm until through the music you have the freedom to interpret it. Perhaps that's why white folks just never do clapping time with my music the right way. I tell them, honey, I know you're enjoying yourself, but please don't clap along with me. Unfortunately, I had a video example that I was going to show to you, and we weren't able to connect it with the technology available in the room. But Mahalia, in the context of an actual performance, was singing, and she had a crowd of people who were not clapping in the right place. In the middle of her performance, she stopped, and she said, "Let's clap right." And she continued to give them instructions on how to clap. Now, why did she do this? Because so she could do the job she needed to do. She understood that there was a system that was defining the character of the music. And she needed a body of persons who were engaging in that in the way that was defined by the system itself. So when we turn to listening to this collaboration between Mahalia and Duke Ellington in Come Sunday, what we discover is something really very powerful. Two genres coming together. two consummate artists, two giants, one in jazz, one in gospel music. They came together, as you saw in the photograph that we handed out earlier. You see them collaborating over the musical score. What is the role of the score in gospel music performance? It simply acts as a point of departure. Duke wanted Mahalia to bring her own individual dark-skinned self to the performance of Come Sunday. She sang the spirit of a people. She sang the spirit of freedom. We don't know exactly how she felt about her participation in Come Sunday. If she felt free, if she felt bound by the score, if she felt bound by the space in which she was performing, if she felt bound by how it might be interpreted by her sisters and brothers in the church because she was singing with someone who was not a sacred music artist, by singing with a jazz artist. What was the price of freedom?
Good evening to everyone. To restate the question, what are the sounds of freedom that fuel my work? Like many panelists, when I received this question from Emily, I had some concerns. I was deeply troubled, wasn't sure how I would handle it. So read the question, and I let it marinate for a little while. Came back to it, wrote it out, shouted it out, argued with the question, and I found that I was struggling with the word freedom. At least for me, I couldn't quite understand what that meant on a personal level. And actually, I was struggling with it on a number of levels, understanding what freedom meant in light of being black and reared in the South decades ago. Also trying to understand what freedom meant in conjunction with the religious traditions in which I grew up. And lastly, trying to understand freedom and what it means to be a human being, something that's been discussed earlier in this. And I also found that I was very angry. I had a lot of anger because of these things, different things that had happened that I don't need to go into that I was holding on to. But I've also learned that I use that anger in my composition, in my music, and so forth. Going back to that question, what are the sounds of freedom that fuel my music? Well, there are a number of them. And, of course, I could reference the words of Martin, Malcolm, Alice Walker, Du Bois, Octavia Butler, and others, and a number of others. But there are some that are musical innovators that stand out to me, and some of you will recognize them. But the reason they do is because they were free to do what it is that they do. For instance, the late, great James Brown, for me, is a musical innovator and one who exemplified freedom. One of my most favorite songs, some of you will know, will probably say the other part after me, but Say It Loud. Yeah. Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit, just the way that she interpreted that. Marvin Gaye, his being able to ask social, cultural, socio-political question and what's going on, and expressing himself with Mercy, Mercy Me, and viewing what was going on around him. Just having the freedom to do that. Patti Labelle, just Patti Labelle's voice alone exemplifies freedom, and that's something that contributes to my work as well. It may sound strange to some, but Parliament Funkadelic is a powerful source that fuels my work. And it's not necessarily the words. Sometimes it's just, for those of you that can understand the grooves. For instance, I know for me, when the song Flashlight is on, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't come near me. Others, Prince, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Stevie Wonder, India Arie. These are people that I consider musical innovators who have who have that freedom, something that I'm still trying to get to. Also, in the area of jazz, John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, men who people said that they were crazy in what they did, and now are still trying to figure out what they did and trying to emulate them and imitate them. There are some specific physical sounds that fuel my work, and they were being touched on just a second ago. But for lack of a better term, but some of those unintelligible sounds of the human voice. In other words, those ahs and ohs and ums and growls and groans and humming that one does in pieces. Even whistling. I don't know if you are familiar with Phyllis Hyman, but she was one of the greatest whistlers I have ever heard in my life. And we hear an example of this in Mahalia Jackson at the end of the song, where she's just humming that. I even heard someone say, that's it right there. And to me, just in those, what she's doing verbally, no words, it conveys just this plethora of emotion and information in just nanoseconds. I know for me, she can take me just in places that I need to go. Just the way that she does this, the twisting and the bending and the moaning of those notes. There are some sounds of freedom that I know I can speak for me that I do take for granted. And I'm constantly trying to interpret and understand the world around me. And sounds of nature. When I sit back and listen to things like rain and thunder and wind. Where we are, we have some horrendous thunderstorms. But in those, I hear sounds of freedom, because there is nothing that anyone can do to the rain, the wind, and thunder. You can't go out and turn it down. You can't stop. There's nothing that you can do, and I just find that amazing. Also, one that has come up recently, and that is the laughter of my grandson. To get that little joker wound up and have him start to laugh and giggle, to me is a priceless sound of freedom, and I'm working hard to in the hope that he will never lose that. With all of that that I've been thinking about, and Emily's question and so forth, I bravely attempted to write a short piece that I'd like to perform for you. I really enjoy instrumental music. I think instrumental music speaks to those who will take the time to listen. I would have to tell Emily I was really impressed and happy when we came in. I don't know if anybody realized that Kirk Whalum was playing and was setting the mood. You go, well, being bamboozled, didn't even understand. It was a subliminally set the mood for everything. And just with the influence of the Ellington piece, and Mahalia's singing, I just had this melody that kept popping in my mind, and I couldn't get rid of it, which meant that I needed to do something with it, so I did.
gonna jump around a little bit so that we can spread out the music in our presentation. I want to come from a slightly different place because I've been so transformed by these conversations, challenged in some hard ways, but it's all been good. I want to talk about, first of all, the question that was posed to all of us, that is the sounds of freedom that fuel my work. And in many ways, it'll sound kind of redundant, but for me, any sound that expresses what I'm feeling, where I'm feeling it, is a sound that expresses and fuels my work. It's a sound of freedom. And I want to start at the beginning because I think part of what holds us all together in spite of our religious orientation, all of these other orientations, is the musical tradition that binds us together, that is African in its basis. And it's the way in which we sing and speak that is rooted in our Africanness. And so it's in the moan that I can hear and be fueled in my freedom. It's in using my body as an instrument and as a drum and dancing and hearing the music in the feet that fuels my sense of freedom. It's in the song that doesn't even have to have words that I sense my own freedom. It's in our artists that talk about the power of music to transform lives and to change lives. It's in my friend August Wilson when he talks about the power of the blues, the way the music and the world comes in and the music comes out. It's the way in which he understood the power of the blues, yet and still he didn't recreate the blues. He understood the aesthetic of that resistance and affirmation statement that was both musical and literary at the same time. And so whenever I encounter these sounds, or when I hear Marvin Gaye, or when I hear Stevie Wonder, when I hear Thelonious Monk late at night, when I hear Beethoven early in the morning, this all fuels my work. And it's not just about its Africanness, it's about the power of sound. It's the power of organized sound that our ancestors understood so completely that that's why they had music for everything. Grandmama just didn't sing to come to church. She sang while she was hanging out the wash. She sang while she was heating up the water to do the wash. She sang while she was spanking your butt. She sang all the time because music, the idea of music for every function is who we are. We don't think of having a baby without having the right music. We don't bury our dead without the right music. And it's because we understand the power of music to transform the situation, the reality. Music changes things. It's our access to the divine. And what you hear in Mahalia is this powerful expression of the fact that Mahalia, although she was influenced by older singers, she sounds like Mahalia. And even though Aretha listened to Mahalia and Bessie Smith, she sounds like Aretha. Because the aesthetic in our culture is that even though you learn through the tradition, you have to have your own voice. You can't be an imitator in this music because that is a false expression. Train listened to Lester Young, but he sounded like Train. And so in a sense, what we have to come with is our own expression. Brother Ted had to bring his own song to this experience so that we could understand the power of our own individual expression. So now let's put it in an aesthetic context. People who were enslaved, who were told they had no voice, who were told they could only speak when they were spoken to. Think about how powerful it is to be able to have your own song. Think about how powerful it would be to be in a worship experience, and when they have a devotional, you tap just like this. And this don't have nothing to do with the prayer hymn. It's just that Aunt Susie in the back of the room say, yes, I'm hearing this. And so she can affirm that with her own contribution that is uniquely their own. When we hear the unison songs that we're singing, the prayer hymns, and somebody's singing out of tune, well, it's not out of tune in our tradition. It's because the validity is that everybody's singing. Do you hear? And it's that sound when they start moaning all together and somebody is lining out that hymn, that we're not worried about the intonation. We're worried about the truth of the song. And so these are the things that, for me, bind and fuel my work. But I want to bring this on a slightly different level in the few moments that I have with you all, because I think that there are some important things that are changing in our culture. that I want to call your attention to. I think music is still central, but we've alluded to it in several ways. And for me, what makes music so important is that our musical traditions, the rich traditions that we celebrate, have always been self-defining, they've always been self-serving, and they've always been self-affirming. Now, I want to put that in the context. That is, our spiritual songs were not made for sale. They were made because they expressed who we are and our relationship to our God. They affirmed our humanity. What's changing in our communities now, and I think we are at a crisis, is that the music that we now sing no longer necessarily is affirming. We don't control it. It is not being defined by us. It's being defined by an industry. The success of the expression does not come out of the collective experience of us worshiping together. It comes out of the number of units sold. It changes the very nature of the criteria of its authenticity. Now you have to be platinum. And now as we look at the commodification of our culture, it has completely, I think, co-opted the agency of black music. So, for example, even in our churches don't sing the spirituals because even the preachers don't think it's relevant. They don't sing the old hymns, orally, passed on or otherwise, because they don't think it's relevant. Everybody's trying to get the next hit that's on the radio. But let me tell you who controls the radio. Not us. Not us. And my problem is that it's changing our worship experience. That we come to hear what we heard on the radio rather than coming to express our relationship and experience with God. It is so profound that in mega churches, and mega churches are not the only ones guilty, but now people are so used to hearing a recorded track as a way of being, they associate excellence with sounding like the track. In a tradition that values improvisation all the time. We never want to fix it so it's the same over and over and over again. Where's my individual voice if I'm just singing to the track? You see where I'm coming from? It takes out the creative, empowering way in which our music has always existed. When the brothers sang the blues and said, I wonder how long it'll be before I become a man, he was not trying to get a hit record. He was trying to express himself. When we created the song, There Is a Balm in Gilead, which is a theological interpretation of Scripture, because it was a question, right? Is there no balm in Gilead? We said, no, there is a balm. When we raised the rhetorical question, did my Lord deliver Daniel? It's because we understood the answer. Do you see where I'm coming from? My concern is that the one thing that we have brought that has changed and transformed the entire modern world didn't have anything to do with modernity. Grandmama couldn't even spell modernity. Didn't have to do with post-structuralism. Didn't have to do with deconstructionalization. Didn't have any of that. I can't even say it. But I know this one thing. The power, the liberating power that helped Grandmama know she was free in a way that didn't have anything to do with what she could afford. The way in which our slave ancestors understood they were free in Jesus, a slave to Christ, but free in Jesus. That profound freedom doesn't have anything to do with one social circumstance. Now hear me. That doesn't say that we don't want to be free in reality. It means that spiritual freedom fuels our existential freedom. It's our reason for being free. That's why for us, freedom and justice always go together. How are you going to break off justice from freedom and mercy? That's who we are as a faithful people. So I just want us to talk about, because I do love hip-hop, but I'm concerned. Well, hip-hop is a sound of music. It doesn't have anything to do. But I'm concerned with the way in which our children are now trying to live into these texts that their people did not create. And we're now trying to live into the images that we see on TV that foster a racist and sexist and oppressive reality for people of color. And now we consume it like there was no tomorrow. And we ask not nary a question. And I think that this is the time to begin to ask the questions. It's at the Harlem Renaissance point, my friends, that Alain Locke and Du Bois were having a problem with that religious music that your grandmama was singing. That's why they were concerned about the arrangements of the spirituals that might be acceptable to the new Negro. It's because Baraka and my brother Larry Neal, who I loved, were still struggling with what it meant to be a spiritual people, that I think we need to bring this conversation back to the kitchen table and put ourselves together in a way that both affirms our blackness but doesn't take the God or our agency out of it. That's all I have to say.
What are you going to play?
Well, we heard Mahalia. You don't have to put nothing on Mahalia. Mahalia's so bad, we leave it to Mahalia.
All right.
Oh, yeah, goddamn.
I got a hot John in my pocket. I got mud on my shoes. I walked all the way from Mississippi just to spread the news. No need for idle conversation. I'm not your girl about town. But when it comes to traveling, I'm gonna run the voodoo down. Here in this quiet place I own, worlds are born. On the night of my conception, when the stars were fixed, conjure woman told my mother, she gonna turn, she gonna twist. No need to worry about her learning. That girl's gonna get around. And when it comes to making a music, she gon' run that voodoo down. Down here in this quiet place I own, worlds are born. Destiny is my deliverance. I walk these streets alone. I take pleasure in remembering I'm just a rolling stone. I don't mind a little company if you want to hang around. But when it comes to making love, I'm sure gonna run the voodoo down. Down here in this quiet place I own, worlds, my world is born. As we talk about collaborations, that is a collaboration of a bit of a different sort. Run the Voodoo Down was a 13.5-minute piece written by Miles in early 70s. And Cassandra, there's only one. Cassandra took the song in 1997 and made it her own. Now, for the musicians in the room, she changed the time signature from 4 to 6 and then wrote those words. she's a brave, brave woman. And anybody who's followed Cassandra's career, still recorded by Blue Note, but she's a whole lot more than a jazz vocalist. I thought about this question and struggled with it as well. And I struggled with it because of what the truth is for me. And I just wasn't sure that I wanted to tell you what fuels my voice today. But I know that Bernice used to always say, if a song is bothering you or something is bothering you, that means it's time to deal with it. And so I said, okay. I was a heroin addict for 33 years. I snorted heroin every day for 33 years. And there are many, many people in this room who have seen me, heard me sing on brilliant stages and 2x4 chitlin places. And I was probably high. God was with me all the time because I never stopped singing. And I remember when I first realized that I had a gift, I was 6 years old, and I was in my living room in Richmond, Virginia, singing "Oh Holy Night," because I loved how those chords moved around in my body. And my granddaddy came in the room, he said, "Girl, where you get that voice from?" And so I knew then that I had something that was not only good for me, but might be good for somebody else who was listening. And so God was with me all those years. I knew it. But I wasn't ready for God to be with me. I wasn't ready to say that I'm doing God's work. Ain't nothing, you can't deny that Sweet Honey in the Rock is doing God's work. So for 18 years, that's what I did. And that was my life, you know. And then God sent me an angel. I'd been to 20 rehabs if I'd been to one in those 33 years. And God sent me an angel, a woman I met at a festival in August of 2002. And she said to me, I'm going on a trip in my RV. She was a musician. I'm going on the road for 6 weeks. I'll help you kick. And at that time, my partner was an attorney. We lived at 69th and Central Park West. And she was an alcoholic. But I was the bad guy, of course. And she would come home from her business meetings, her dinners, drunk. I'd steal her bank card. I'd get $100. I'd have my dope money for the next day. And I did that. We were together for 9 years. And one day I said, oh my God, I could do this forever. It was so easy. I was going to do it forever. I was resigned to dying a dope fiend. And then God sent this woman. I went home to 69th and Central Park West because I was finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I packed a bag and I left. And after those 6 weeks, I was in Goshen, Massachusetts. I never even heard of it. I ain't know nothing about Western Massachusetts. And I got out of that RV in October of 2002, and I have 5.5 years clean of drugs on March 1st. So I am fueled by my voice. I am fueled by the voice of this black woman, this queer black woman, this ex-dope fiend. I still got my voice. God wanted me to keep it. I still have my health. And I'm still kind of cute for 58. So, so God said, go out and do my work. So I started looking for jobs in this Pioneer Valley where I live now. I went to a rock and roll girls camp and said, please hire me. I want to work with those young girls who want to make music. I want to help them write the songs and talk to them about my life and tell them, you don't have to do it that way. You don't have to go that route, but you do have to work for it. I went to the Performing Arts High School and they hired me because they knew who I was from my past. They knew I'd been in Sweet Honey in the Rock. It's my ticket, boo. I love it. Okay? I ain't been in the group since 1992. But everybody knows who I am. Okay? I went to the Northampton Community Music Center. I got a job there. I got a job at Smith College, teaching the introduction to African American music, but they didn't want me to stay there. They said I was too radical because they wanted to listen to some black music, but they didn't want to know about where it came from. They didn't want me to talk about the social, political, and economic conditions that birthed the music. So there's only one story about black music, and it got all them components, okay? So I am fueled by the fact that I still have it and that young people still want it. And I got it to give. I don't know why there is a disconnect. You know, because all these young people, they listen to their iPods and they got everybody else's music playing, and you get them in a room and try to teach them a song, and they say, I don't sing. I don't dance. They don't go to church on a regular basis, and their parents aren't singing, the family's not singing to them. So they only think those people with the contracts can sing. Yeah, our work is hard. And you bring the spirituals in. We don't want to sing them sad songs. So as a teacher, you got something in your right back pocket and something in your left back pocket, and you're pulling out of the front pockets as you walk in the door. So I'm making the music theirs. Because especially in the spiritual repertoire, we can change the words all we want to. So we change the words. We bring in the drums. You get your beat going. And the music can be yours. Okay, all I want is your voice. You don't have to sound like nobody else. Sure don't have to sound like me. I want your voice. I want your story. I'm in Pioneer Valley. There's two people, me and Nikki, who look alike around there. Okay? Everybody else is white. All my choirs, they're mostly white. And I'm trying to... Well, when do you come in now? What do you say? Is it you put the T on the end of that? Or I said, look, this music is in your hips. It ain't in your head.
I will try to be brief. I realize that our time is of essence at the moment. Ever since black people have been forced to leave home, leave their tribes, leave their trees, leave their drums, leave their people, herded into slave ships that we heard the names of earlier today, in the bows of the ship and brought to this country, landed here, 40% of them on Sullivan Island, they tell me, in South Carolina, through Charleston. Ever since they've been here, down under the magnolia tree and by the Chattahoochee River, they've asked the question, Lord, how come we here? Lord, how come we here? What you hear today and what you've heard my panelists talk about today is an effort to answer the question, Lord, how come we here? It was answered with spirituals, and I'm supposed to react to my work. My work is both preaching and worship, liturgy and homiletics. And so they answered with song, but they also answered with sermon. And I want to say a word about that, and then I'm going to go back to the music. But we dare not give up the prophetic preaching tradition that is a part of the black church because white folk are attacking the black church and black preaching.
Yes, sir. You're right. You're right about that. You're right about that. You're right about that. You're right about that. Yes, sir. You're right about it. You're right about it.
We stand in a great tradition.
Yes, sir.
The 7th century prophets and the 8th century prophets, Amos and Hosea and Jeremiah,
Yes, sir.
Ezekiel, Daniel and Micah.
Yes, sir.
And that old Jeremiah, who is named after Jeremiah, had a right and a responsibility to preach the prophetic word, to speak truth to power. That is our tradition. Lord, how come we here? Better let that alone. Now, you heard Mahalia Jackson singing Come Sunday. And you had in your hand the music to Come Sunday. Do you know where this came from? Let me tell you. This came out of the United Methodist Hymnal. That's where you copied it from, isn't it, Dr. Burnim? You know why it's there? Because I thought with those white folk that we're going to put Duke Ellington's hymn in the hymnal. It's the only Protestant hymnal in America that has a jazz song in it. And when the folk in the last church I tried to pastor told me we couldn't have jazz in the sanctuary, I just opened the hymnal. See, I know those Negroes would be all right if it's in the white folk book. And that's why, I'm going to tell a couple other stories, that's why we can't give up on scholarship being our work. Yes, we're going to serve the people in the ghetto, but we're going to get some folk ready to go down there. But some of us have to study. And we can't give up on scholarship. I was proud of those young people up here this afternoon. You ask about the future of black religion. You saw it up here today. Now, I'll say, tell just a couple things. In the 35 years ago, I looked at the Methodist hymnal. I looked at the other Protestant hymnals. They didn't have our music in them. And the Methodists had the nerve to put 6 spirituals in there and call them folk melodies. And they put hymn number 244. They put Charles Tindley's When the Storms Are Raging, Stand By Me. And so I thought that we ought to have something that ought to show that our music is a great contribution to the church. And so I fought for 10 years to get Abingdon Press to publish our music. And I finally got them 28 years ago now to publish Songs of Zion. And it was only after Songs of Zion came out that the other denominations and the other publishing companies are willing to do black music for the church. And so, Songs of Zion, and then we got Lift Every Voice, and we got The Faith We Sing, and so on and so on and so on. The Catholics and the Episcopalians and so on. But it was Songs of Zion. When I wrote the companion to Songs of Zion to try to help white folks in particular understand what these songs are and how to sing them, guess what I call my book? Come Sunday. Now the sequel. The sequel to Songs of Zion has just come out. It's called Zion Still Sings. And the subtitle is, Cornell, For Every Generation. The point here is to bridge. That's what we tried to do with this book. We tried to bridge the generations. We tried to bridge young folk and old folk. There's no reason why old black folk can't talk to young black folk. We brought some young people as a part of this editorial committee to put this together. I chaired the text committee. Cynthia Wilson chaired the tunes committee. We brought some young people in, and they brought their songs in. And we started singing some of the songs we knew, and they said, oh. When we started singing the freedom songs, they said, well, we can rap to that. And so we put some rap and some hip-hop and some other music here that's contemporary in the church. I want to say one other thing, and then we need to hear from Dennis. There is a serious danger that Dr. Andrews was pointing to. That is, gospel music has the tendency now to just be 7-11 music. 7 words 11 times. Part of our, and I'll be through after this, part of our scholarly responsibility, Dr. Burnim, is to help these young folk who are writing gospel music recover the prophetic tradition and to put the narrative in and to put social justice back into our music. When black folks sang spirituals, they weren't just singing songs. They were saying a point of view. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, and you tell old Pharaoh to let my people. My Lord delivered Daniel. Why not everything? That's a point of view. That's a theological point of view. That's not just a song.
I'll let it down. Let the church say amen. I'm going to say a few words right after we take the offering.
We are not going to take questions after this because it will ruin. And so the folks up here are going to decide something they're going to do together or in some form.
Evelyn's going to help us.
And Evelyn's going to help, and Bobby Mcclain's going to preach again. So just so you know, that's why we've pulled the mics.
Haven't we been blessed? Again, I want to thank Emily Towns. We've thanked her several times. But I want to say a special thank you for this particular session. This is the first time. I've tried to bridge the gap between the academy and the church for several years now, between the mind and the spirit, between art and the academy, etc. But this is the first time I've ever been asked to give some kind of presentation that would combine my scholarship with my art. And I think that too many times in the academy we make that division, and too many times in the church we make that division. And we put emphasis on different sides of that equation, but that tends to be what happens. And so I am honored, I'm glad to be here and to be on this panel. Now, this question that we've been given, what are the sounds of freedom that fuel your work? I've thought about it like everybody else has. And my response always goes back to the music. I think the music is the place where, the same place where the spirit dwells. That's where the music dwells within us. And it helps us to bridge the gaps and bridge the differences, the barriers, to break down those barriers that divide people. It's sort of a Pentecostal kind of language, I think, so that we can relate across lines of division and walls of division. Music has a way of bringing folk together. And I heard somebody in an earlier panel, one of these young folk who did a marvelous job, but the sister Angelette, is that her name? Angelette over there. She was talking about the 70s, and she said she hadn't been born yet. That kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. But you know what? I've decided, just like Jeremiah Wright's church, and Jeremiah happens to be my cousin, and I'm proud of my cousin, Jeremiah Wright Jr. But just as his church, Trinity United Church of Christ, has a slogan, unashamedly black and unapologetically Christian, I have decided that I'm going to be unashamedly old and unapologetically bold. And I'm trying to get used with this aging thing, Cornell. Now, I'm not that old, but I'm moving on up. How old am I? I'm 57 years old. And the reason I share that with you, did somebody say that you're a young man? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I needed that right at that point. But the reason I share that with you is that when I think of this question, my response to it is very autobiographical. Because if you think about it, the music that we hear, we identify with the various stages of our lives. you know, the first time you met that special someone. You can remember the song. Somebody ought to say amen up in here. Now, I know this is Yale Divinity School, but we've had 8 wonderful panels, and we need to loosen up a little bit because we got to get ready to dance a little later on as well. Oh, we're off campus now? But let me just say that the autobiographical nature of my answer to the question is this, and I would divide it into maybe 3 parts. And the first would have to do with the sounds of Sunday, and I relate those sounds to the 1950s. I was born in 1950. And I also want to relate that to a theme that I am Sunday's child. And then I want to move to the next decade and suggest that the next theme of that would be the sounds of the struggle. And I relate that to the 60s. And I want to suggest that I am a child of the 60s. And I'm proud to be a child of the 60s. And then finally, I want to suggest that the third movement in that whole piece is that we would want to consider what Howard Thurman calls the sound of the genuine. And I'm relating that to all the time that comes after the 60s. And I'll tell you why in just a second. That leads up to this present moment. And I want to suggest that I am a child of God. I am Sunday's child. I am a child of the 60s. But most importantly, I am a child of God. Now, as Sunday's child, I'm reminded that I grew up in the home of a preacher, and I was surrounded by preachers. I'm the son of a preacher. I'm the grandson of a preacher. I'm the nephew of preachers. I am the brother of a preacher. I am the husband of a preacher who happens to be my co-pastor at our church. And then the other reason that I say that I'm Sunday's child is because I was born on July 9th, 1950. You check it out. It was a Sunday. And my name, Dennis, I've looked up, you know, you see these things sometimes, you get some kind of a card or a keychain or something that tells you what your name means. And one time I saw my name means worshiper. So I'm proud to be, I am a child of the black church. I love the black church. It's always been a part of my life. But I think when we love something dearly, we ought to be able to critique it. Amen. Amen. And we ought to be able to speak truth to powers that exist not only beyond our own churches and community, but we ought to be able to speak truth to power within. Little pockets of power, petty power, and that kind of thing. So I get my freedom from that. Also, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so I'm familiar with segregation. We couldn't go to the, certain bathrooms, and we all went to the same schools, and somebody else talked about it the other day. We had to climb up several steps to get to see the movie. And so, but the interesting thing, and I thought about this a lot as we listened to the panel the other day that said, when will we be able to stop pleading our case that we are human? And I remembered that this may seem like a strange sound, the sound of segregation as a sound of freedom. But we've always been able to flip the script. So that even though we may not have achieved the ultimate goal of freedom, we never felt that we were less than or less than those persons who claimed to be free. And in fact, sometimes we felt that we were freer than they were. Because as Nikki Giovanni said in one of her poems, Nikki Rosa, she said, I hope a white person never has to write about me because they'll probably talk about how, you know, they don't understand black love and wealth. They'll probably talk about how unfortunate I was when all the time I was quite happy. So we have been able to, you know, make something out of nothing. And then as a child of the 50s, as a Sundays child, I remember too that the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King Jr. and how some of those songs of the movement, I remember my father sometimes, you know, when we found ourselves getting down and out, we've been able to pick up a song. I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord till I die. I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in the Lord until I die. Now those songs give you strength. They give you power. And then as we move on to I could share many more, but in the interest of time, we move on to the 60s. And I think about the sound of gunfire, Bay of Pigs, Vietnam War. And we've heard about all of the assassinations. Medgar Evers, Bobby Kennedy. In order, it would be Medgar Evers, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Bobby Kennedy, and so many others. Fred Hampton, Kathleen Cleaver mentioned Fred Hampton the other day as well. And there's so many others. And let's not forget those 4 little girls. Amen. Amen. At the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. Amen. Amen. And so many others, the 3 civil rights workers. And so many others who died. A white woman, Viola Liuzzo. Okay. James Reeb, who was a Unitarian, and so many others who gave their lives. And so the sounds, and then we think of the sounds of the urban rebellions as our people were getting frustrated with what was going on in this nation. And then there's another sound, the Motown sound. And once again, it reminds us how we're able to somehow have this strange mixture of sorrow and joy that allows us to keep on keeping on. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. Well, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? Talking about my girl. I've got so much honey, the bees envy me. I've got a sweeter song than any bird in any tree. Well, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? Talking about my girl. Talking about my girl. Oh, talking about my girl. You know, it's a dangerous thing to get me on the piano because I enjoy it so much. But when we were dealing with the whole issue of moving forward in the 60s, we also came to the point of black power and black pride. Somebody already mentioned it. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. And then there was also Nina Simone.
Yes, yes, Lord.
To be young.
Gifted and black.
Oh, my God.
Evelyn, do you remember?
To be young, gifted, and black.
Yes.
Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. In a whole world, you know, every boy and girl is young, gifted, and black. And then we began to hear protest songs and other songs that dealt with our situation. Gil Scott-Heron, anybody remember him?
Oh, D.C.
The Last Poets, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Curtis Mayfield, Keep On Pushing.
Yeah.
Move On Up.
Yeah.
All songs. And you know, we were beginning to understand that there's not such a sharp dichotomy between the sacred and the secular.
Yes.
That these songs gave us spiritual strength and spiritual energy.
Yes.
And we didn't always have to go to church to get that. And we understand that the Spirit is not confined to any particular building or facility. And then we went on, and I realized that as I went to college, and Cornell and I were at Harvard at the same time, and we took over buildings. And we marched. In fact, we learned more outside the classroom than we did inside the classroom. Because it was a time of awakening, a beautiful time to be alive, although there was always a whole lot of stuff that was going on. And so I had a group at Harvard called the Dennis Wiley Black Ensemble. I had to get that black in there. And I'm also proud to say that I, along with my roommate Fred Lucas, founded the Kuumba Singers at Harvard College. April was a member of the Kuumba Singers. That's why she's excited. And there was a song that I sang. I wrote some songs, some message songs. And just to give you an idea, getting back to this word freedom, and I use the word individuality. It really, you know, music, you have certain liberties that you don't have otherwise. Individualism would probably be the more correct term. But this song says individuality. But the point of it was that it's not about us just doing our own thing. That we felt in that day and time that we had to work together, that we were one, and we were a community. There is really no such thing as doing your own thing where we're concerned. 'Cause we are in a situation where freedom is a precious prize that must be earned. Individuality should never be the purpose of our world to be. Group responsibility is the only way to reach that day when we're free. And as I close, and I am running briefly, but the last sound that I thought about as we left the 60s and went into, you know, there was one of the biggest backlashes ever when this nation realized that black folk were feeling proud of themselves and when we were starting to love ourselves and feel good about who we are. And we're still reeling from that backlash. It began with the election of Richard Nixon in 1968, the same year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, and also the same year that I went to college. And so we're looking 40 years back from all of that and realizing that we've been wandering in this wilderness for 40 years. And it's time for us to, cross on over now. We've been wandering around long enough. And so as I think about that, I think about also some of the other artists that came to us in the 70s, including Earth, Wind, and Fire. But I also think of the infiltration of drugs in our communities. And remember how the Temptations, they used to sing love songs, then they start singing about a ball of confusion, Psychedelic Shack, Cloud Nine, all reflecting what was going on. And the music does have a tendency to reflect what's going on in the world. Yes, exactly. And then the gospel music that's been talked about. The gospel music was music that it gave us a certain joy. It did not have the cutting edge to deal with the prophetic issues, as Bobby Mcclain has just said. And so it was a mixed blessing. Certainly there were songs that helped us to make it through, like, Lord, help me to hold out. Lord, help me to hold out. So those songs did lift us up and make us, help us to get through. And then Nobody Told Me, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. Brought me this far, I don't believe he brought me this. One more time. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. So I want to close with this. I want to suggest to you just a couple things in closing. Number one, we began to see that this line between the spiritual and the secular was not as sharp as we thought it was. Like, for instance, Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack sang You Got a Friend, and then James Cleveland and Aretha Franklin went to a church and sang the same song and combined it with Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And then I think it was Gladys Knight and the Pips sang You're the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, and then James Cleveland took that. You know what I'm saying? Yep. James Cleveland. Yeah. And so that but the other thing that was happening is that as the reaction, the backlash to our empowerment happened, and the drug thing happened, and then black on black crime started increasing. And so we started oppressing each other. And we're still doing that. So the freedom that we speak about is not just freedom from white folk. We got to be liberated from ourselves, because sometimes we are our biggest enemies. And the whole thing, some of you heard that my church has taken a strong stand on this whole issue of homophobia and heterosexism. Sometimes I'm very ashamed of the church. I'm embarrassed by the church. I'm hurt by the church. And my wife and I have determined that we're going to be a church or try to lead our church to be a church that opens its doors. So that so many folk don't have to leave the church who are wonderful, good people, but they have to leave because they have to be something other. The church expects them to be something other than who they really are. And I earnestly believe that Martin Luther King and certainly Howard Thurman would be on that same page if they were here today. Howard Thurman talked about the sound of the genuine. And I just want to read briefly a couple of quotes for those of you who are not familiar with that concept. He said, "You are the only you that has ever lived. Your idiom is the only idiom of its kind in all the existences. And if you cannot hear the sound of the genuine in you, you will all of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls." Somewhere else he said, "There is in every person that which waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. There is in every person that which waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in other people. And when these two sounds come together, this is the music God heard when God said, 'Let us make human beings in our own image.'" And one other quote that I love that Thurman says, he says, "I always wanted to know how I could be me without keeping you from being you." And so I close with this song that I wrote. This is the anniversary of Martin Luther King's death that we celebrated on yesterday. And I thought it might be appropriate for me to just close my few moments with this song, a song that I wrote several years ago. It's called Martin, simply Martin. Martin is gone. Something that I can't explain. Never to return again. But I know we got to carry on. We all must try to keep his dream alive. Never ever cease to strive to do the very best we can. Martin is gone. There's nothing we can do about that. It's a plain and simple fact. But I'm sure we've got to carry on. They killed the dreamer, but they can never kill his dream. Yes, I'm sure of this one thing. If we do the very best we can, Martin would never want us to waste all our time sitting around wishing that he was still alive. I think he would rather want us to stand up and continue to fight. 'Cause there's no matter if you're black, brown, yellow, red, or white, Martin is gone. Never to return again. I just can't explain, but I know we've got to carry on. We all must try to keep his dream alive. Never ever cease to strive to do the very best we can. Some folk just sit around and cry, wishing that Martin never had to die. But I don't think that's what he would want us to do. 'Cause there's too much work for me and you. Martin is gone. Nothing we can do about that. It's a plain and simple fact. But I know we've got to carry on. They killed the dreamer, but they can never kill his dream. Yes, I'm sure of this one thing. If we do the very best we can, the very best we can, got to keep on working. Yeah, we got to keep on fighting. Got to do the very best that we can.